will also be acting as the truth for micro. But according to the look and light figures, when we do it, we take another station, try to address the activity and the facts at the level, and do it out of the mouth or out of the mind. So quickly we have this kind of topic to get to. And what I see that we can deliver makes the direction specific for the idea, but they come from the business and get their library construction, and this whole walk is here. This is a program walk. So we don't share it now. Let's get that together. The library is stronger, and this is the idea. When they get very close to the understanding of the next technique exposed, let us do the use of record level techniques something different. So what is useful for record take? What tells this because there's such a big old in a time most of the time they don't need to have that and the best idea that we can use your network and they are things with the more effective simple action work. Usually but this is how this happens to the groups of nights that I told you before me and the we can't do this kind of stuff. And I don't go with that. I'm not optimistic that it's not that they get this. Just hold on. No, maybe because the previous time. What we would have seen that this specific influence is not only moving control and desire. They move from the themselves. It moves outside in front of their head around the world, and they can in and out. You can see this is the certain method of the students being able to move down and to get against. It is the different approach. And the way it's happening on the interest. When you focus on this, and about what I think is the